Hey, how's it going, guys? Today we're gonna have a quick look at one of my new keyboards, relatively new, the Lily 58, and this is a kind of compact ergo type keyboard. And yeah, let's get into it. So before I do get into my build experience with this board, I do just want to note that there's not going to be an unboxing portion here because this board can be configured in a few different ways. In my case, I did buy my board off of Little Keyboards, and they do have a few different case options, FR4, acrylic, and wood, I believe. I went with the acrylic one, and this being kind of one of those more niche boards, you do have options when it comes to your microcontrollers. And in my case, I did go with two Elite Cs, and I know that's not the most budget-friendly choice. However, Little Keyboards didn't really offer USB-C Pro micros, which are traditionally micro USB, which I'm not too fond of, and I think most people aren't. But other stores will have that option. But if I bought my microcontrollers off of a different website, including separate shipping and all that, the cost would have come out about the same. So going with the two Elite Cs was the right move for me. And I also did get two OLED screens for this, as well as glass covers for those screens. And one more thing to note here is that there is a difference between the normal Lily 58 and the 58 Pro. And so the Pro version, the main difference here is that it supports Kailh hot swap sockets. And apart from that, on the Pro version, you're going to want to use surface mounted diodes. Technically, you could make through-hole ones work, but the overall aesthetic and ease of building, I think, would be much easier using surface mounted for that, whereas the normal Lily 58 doesn't natively support hot swap sockets. You could mil-max the board. I don't think that should be an issue for this, but you can use through-hole diodes. That's what it comes with, and the build process is just a bit quicker because of that. So let's talk about my configuration here. So I have the Lily 58 and the black acrylic bottom and top pieces. This board is essentially a top mount where everything is held on by the top. So if you did want to make this board hot swap, if you were to remove every switch, the PCB would just kind of fall down. Not too great there. And again, I did use an Elite C, so both sides are USB-C, and I do have an OLED screen installed as well. Now, what these OLED screens show by default, on the right side, it'll just show a Lily 58 kind of logo or splash image for this specific keyboard. And on the left side, it'll basically show like a key log, which is a little iffy. Like if you're typing out passwords, it'll still show that because it's not managed on like a Windows level. So that is a little bit iffy. That's just something to note if you do kind of share your computer with other people, or if you plan to take this keyboard into work, you might not want to opt for the left side OLED. The right side OLED doesn't really do anything. I'm sure you can configure all of that through QMK, but you're gonna have to kind of get your hands a little dirty to do that, and that's not something I'm too knowledgeable of at this time. Switch-wise, I did go with my Cherry Hyperglide Blacks. They are my favorite linear switch, and so far they've been pretty good. One thing I've noted when I'm working on a more ergonomic board like this, I do find that I rest my hands more so on the keys. So sometimes with linear switches especially, I'll slowly kind of like rest my hand on there, and I'll accidentally actuate a switch without really noticing it unless if I'm looking at the screen. So that is something to note. If you are new to ergonomic keyboards, I mean, just try it and get a hot swap variant if possible, so you can just swap switches in and out. So yeah, I do wish I could swap these out for light tactile switches, but that would require desoldering everything, and I don't want to go through that pain. So yeah, that is something to note there. Now, with regards to the layout of the Lily 58, it is kind of a unique ergo layout where you are missing a bunch of keys down here, which I think they could have added, and I think that would be really nice. It's a very small size increase, and the overall footprint of the board wouldn't change that much, right? Maybe it's because your kind of palm will overlap here for a more comfortable typing experience. I'm not sure. I'm not that smart to think about this stuff. But overall, I actually do really like this because you do have kind of dedicated thumb button, which just rests right under your thumb. It's very comfortable. And if you've watched any of my previous videos, you'll kind of get the gist that I'm into split spacebar, and having dedicated thumb buttons basically does that same thing. But what keeps me from going to something like an Ergodox or Moonlander is that I feel like those boards are a bit too chunky, right? They have a lot of thumb buttons, and the overall keyboard is quite a bit bigger, which I don't think is for me, especially with how small my hands are. I think the Lily 58 is a great size for someone with small hands. One thing to note is that the layout is quite unique, where we do have this random key over here. By default, these are the square brackets on either side. I've set them to lower and raise your layer keys because there's no real good place to put them. I do like having arrow keys, so I wouldn't really budge on like not having arrow keys. So I do have 2 arrow keys here, 2 arrow keys on the other side. I've considered just doing left, right on one side and up, down on the other. I'm not too sure about that yet, but this keyboard is VIA compatible, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue to kind of swap between the two and see what works for me. Otherwise, this board is very similar to a 60 key ortho. So if you are on that using split spacebar or anything like that, I think making a transition to this kind of board is going to be quite easy. Now, in terms of actually building this board, it was quite straightforward. It's all through-hole soldering. The only issue that I came across is that I believe on this side, on the microcontroller, I did accidentally bridge 2 of the contacts, and obviously that caused some issues. And I was an idiot and didn't check the microcontroller before flashing everything, so I had to do that entire process afterwards. Was a bit of a pain, but with a solder sucker and a little bit of time, I managed to get it to work without any issue. Another thing to note, though, is this is my first board where I have to solder in my own microcontroller, OLEDs, all of that. So I was an idiot and I didn't tape things down. So the microcontroller doesn't sit totally flat. And the OLED on both sides is crooked in different ways. So it's a little ugly, but it's functional, so I'm not too upset about it. I do wish I did a bit of a better job, but I was soldering this inside, so I kind of wanted to get it over with as soon as possible. So yeah, otherwise, build process was pretty much a normal keyboard. A big thing about these types of keyboards that are in these unique layouts, like one-off layouts, is that finding keycaps that work for these is going to be quite difficult. You can find a few KAT sets that will work with this, but I find DSA is just so easy to work with, although the point of an ergonomic keyboard is ergonomics, right? So having a flat profile doesn't really help in that regard. So I've considered switching over to a different set, but DSA Magic Girl is so pretty and cute that I just have to use it. It's so perfect. So yeah, that is just something to note, that with these unique layouts, finding keycaps can be quite hard. But on the plus side is that, at least on this board, you don't need any stabilizers. You might if you do choose to use a longer key here, but this board doesn't support it to begin with, right? And anything to you and under, I personally wouldn't use stabilizers anyway. That's just more room for noise, like not great noise. So yeah, just something to know, that finding keycaps for stuff like this is quite difficult. Typing experience, I'll just go over this real quick because I feel like I kind of touched on this here and there in this video. The typing experience is quite nice. Again, I come from split spacebar and split ortholinear, split spacebar, all that kind of stuff. So this transition was quite natural to me, but with some added ergonomic benefits. At first, I was worried about this being a little bit further out because I am used to kind of reaching just under the B for spacebar, like on a normal ortholinear board. However, this, after just about like a couple hours of use, I got quite used to, and having split like space keys essentially really helps out in terms of my personal productivity, right? I do have small hands, so reaching up to backspace, even on a smaller board like this, where backspace would traditionally be, is quite difficult. So having it right next to my thumb is quite nice. Anyways, let's start wrapping up this video. With this keyboard, I do think it's a nice kind of DIY option. It's not super DIY, but it's more DIY than your average keyboard. So it does make for a fun project. And I do really like that it uses a TRRS cable to connect the two halves, which I think is really cool. But that said, the keyboard does kind of look a little janky. It doesn't feel like a full keyboard, but there's a new board that I'm looking to pick up that will hopefully address that and feel a bit more premium, because finding premium feeling boards that have these kinds of layouts is quite difficult. And there are a few, but it is pretty rare compared to normal 60%. So finding those nicer options is quite difficult. Of course, if you're buying these kinds of boards, you're probably not buying it for something super nice. You're probably looking more for the ergonomics, layout, that kind of stuff. But sometimes you want both, right? So that's where this board feels like it falls short a bit. And this board isn't super expensive either. It's maybe like overall on this board, apart from like keycaps, switches, maybe 200 Canadian dollars, including like all the shipping and stuff, because shipping to Canada is expensive. So this board is overall quite affordable. And if you do get cheaper microcontrollers, opt out of getting the LEDs and stuff, the board would drop quite a significant amount as well. So yeah, overall, I think the board is a good value. I am looking for a little more. If you do keep up with like new group buys and stuff, you probably know what board I'm looking at getting next, because it is quite similar to this board with just a few more features and such. But yeah, also to whoever recommended this board in my comments a while back, thank you so much. I'm sorry, I don't remember who you are, and I don't really want to dig through my comments. I'm so sorry, but thanks for recommending it, as it brought it to my attention, and otherwise I wouldn't have known about this board. And so far I'm loving it. I use it for work and everything, and I have been for the past month or so, but that'll change hopefully within the next 6 months or so. So yeah, anyways, I'm going to wrap up this video here. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you do have any questions about this board or anything in this video, be sure to leave it in a comment below, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. And yeah, anyways, thanks for watching, guys, and see you guys in the next one.